I hope you all are keeping safe and healthy. My name is Ashita Marya, and I'm the CEO of Franchise India. I'm very excited today to welcome Sasidhar Nandigam, who's the Chief Strategy Officer and for Credder, CREDR, and has more than 10 years of experience working for venture capital, PE funds, and startups in strategy and growth roles alongside founders and key stakeholders in scaling the businesses to the second level. His core expertise lies in consumer internet companies, and he loves to work on consumer segments where technology has a potential role to enhance the consumer experience. He has worked with a lot of reputed organizations such as Evolve Capital, Growth Story, Springhead Ventures, and others. And as a director of a growth industry, he saw investment opportunities with startups and companies such as Big Basket, Portia, Fresh Manu, Bluestone, House Joy, Homes Clean Media, Verloop, and there are a lot of names like that. And, to come to Credder, it's India's largest two-wheeler consumer brand, which aims at using its proprietary technology to offer the best options to buy and sell the used two-wheeler to maximize customer experience. And the company has traveled from being bootstrapped to a funded startup, raising USD 15 million from OMDR Ventures and Growth Story, Angel List, and 8 Roads. Credder has spread across India and to about 10 cities across India, and has recorded about 2 lakh plus transactions with about 500 channel partners and 50 plus flagship showrooms across Pune, Bangalore, Delhi, and the other cities across India. We also have with us Mr. Gaurav Maurya, who's the chairman of Franchise India, and he's the one who's highly regarded for his contribution in popularizing franchising in India. He's worked with pretty much every brand who's existing in franchising and has got great experience. Sasidhar, I would like to start with you that, Credder is one of the, great franchise business successes in recent times, particularly in the reseller category. With being online and offline, both the reach available to the consumer. So being one of the, core team members, so what has been your journey from past 6 years? If you could, just take us through that.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Ashita and Gaurav, for having me here. To begin with, Credder had a very simple and singular vision when we started way back in 2015. Is how could we create the same kind of great customer experience for a customer buying or selling a second-hand bike, identical to what you get when you are buying a new bike. Because predominantly the customer experience of buying a new bike is a gold standard. The way you get into the showroom, the brand new bike that comes across, the financing options you get, everything that comes as a package while you buying a new bike, we want to replicate in the used bike category. So that was a very naive, very innocent kind of a vision we had, saying that after one of our founders had a very horrible experience buying a second-hand bike in Mumbai. Those are the days when people used to either go to a second-hand dealer in some suburb of every city, which is a scantily looking 200 by 300 square feet shop, which absolutely zero customer experience and zero customer adulation, and or you would either buy the vehicles by talking to hundreds of strangers on OLX, Quikr, and bike wallets of the world, where you have absolutely no clue what are you buying, from where you are buying, whether the quality of the product is good, bad, ugly, whether the bike is stolen, whether the bike is genuine. So there are plethora of problems that you come across when you are buying from a third-party sources where you don't have any kind of relationship or there is no brand. I think those are the days when people, when we started the business, we believed that this is a massive market, because when we went ahead and did our ground work on understanding the size of the market, we realized, Ashita, that more than 30 to 40 million second-hand bikes, that means 3 to 4 crore second-hand bikes are sold in the market every year. It's a massive number. That's even bigger than the new bike number that you see every year, which is around 2 to 2.5 crores per every year. So we believe for a market of such a big number, you really don't have anything that can be credibly called as a consumer brand which can help the consumer pick and choose the right for the hard-earned money. अगर आप 40-50 हजार लेके गाड़ी खरीद रहे हो, the customer should really feel good about that. But on the other hand, he's completely feeling dejected or suspicious कि मैं जो गाड़ी खरीद रहा हूँ सही दाम पे खरीद रहा हूँ, अच्छा क्वालिटी है, पेपर ट्रांसफर हो पाएगा नहीं हो पाएगा, पेपर ट्रांसफर जाली हो सकता है, इंश्योरेंस नहीं मिलता है आपको. So that's where the entire journey of CREDA started in 2015. We've been more than 5 years now. We are in 6 years of our operations, and we are very happy to say that we expanded to 10 more cities in the country. We have transacted, made more than 3 lakh happy customers till date, and still we believe that we have a long way to go, because for a market which has more than 3 to 4 crores of transaction every year, we believe a lot more has to be done to be able to capture the market.
Sure. So just to have, maybe a single point clarity in terms of while you're trying to do a lot of things in the ecosystem. One, from a aggregation, that's one part. Second is upliftment of the product itself, which means that people want a new bike experience while they want to pay for a second-hand bike. That's second part. And then there is a aftermarket capability, which is also there. So which would be the most triggering point you would see out of the three? One, better experience of aggregated space where you're getting more options, getting more availability while you are a single engine of aggregation of this second bike category. Second is the whole refurbishments kind of a situation. And third is the after sales kind of a security that what you bought was. So what would be out of the three most triggered for a customer?
So I think the other 2 points that you mentioned, Gaurav, are in the back end. The most overarching determining factor in this business is the customer experience. You need to understand the context from which the customer has come. The customer has absolutely no trust in the current market interventions. And for you to build the trust in his mind, you have to give him a good quality bike at reasonable price, backed by post-sales products. That means I may be saying that this is the best bike, but that's exactly what every company says about its product. But if you are able to back it by a 6-month warranty or a 12-month warranty, a 7-day buy protect, then you are giving him an additional layer of protection to him, saying that something goes wrong with the bike, here is my guarantee that I will do it for free to you. I think these kind of interventions are very important to create a layer of trust in the mind of consumers while they are transacting with a relatively unknown brand in a highly unorganized, fragmented sector like us. So overarching feature is customer experience. Rest everything becomes a subset of that.
Correct. Consumer experience would play the most important role from a conversion market. So when I always say this, India should never be looked at really creating new categories. India would always be greatest opportunity of conversion market. So whatever people are consuming, wherever they're consuming, if you can just shift them to a better experience, which is user experience, then you don't have to really, this can be a very, very large market for almost everything we consume, right? And you actually picked up one of the largest categories, the two-wheeler segment, and India being one of the largest in the world, probably
largest.
Oh, okay. I thought China was the largest.
No, China we defeated last year.
Anyway, we don't like talking China anyway.
So, taking this conversation further, would like to just understand from that, how do you, from a company standpoint, we feel and, whenever we talk to somebody, they say that, the culture that the company and the culture that prevails within the company has to be right. And most of the other stuff, like you just said about, the customer service or building a long-term brand or empowering employees or customers, happens on its own. Because companies, culture is a concept that is easier to experience than to talk about it or than to describe it. So how do you inculcate that? Having said that, you've got partners also, you've got, your people also interacting with the customers. So how do you do that and inculcate that down the line with your partners?
Two ways. Let me talk about the company first, then the partners. Asita, the very simple slogan that I put it across inside the company is that at the end of the month, when you get your salary debited in your account, put in account, you should understand this salary came from the bikes that the consumers bought from us. So if you don't buy the bikes, then you're not going to get paid salary. So I think this looks very simplistic to understand, but the fact that my employees realize the money that they get paid as salary comes directly from the customers who buy bikes from us makes a very compelling statement for them to treat customers as gods. And between me, Nikhil, and our senior leadership team, our Twitters are flooded by complaints whenever it happens. So 2 3 years back, when we had a lot of such complaints coming in, we realized that down the line, people's empathy with the consumers was not as much as we would like to believe. Primarily because India, for a very long time, has a very laid back attitude towards customer experience. Okay, companies like Flipkart, Amazon have started building that culture. And thanks to my working experience in companies like Big Basket and everywhere else, where customer was put at the forefront of everything we do. In fact, I still remember founder of Big Basket telling me multiple times that it doesn't matter whether a customer is lying or not. What matters is that he complained that the fruit is not good. To keep your mouth shut and return back the money. So this kind of no questions asked policy has a deep impact on the customer psyche while making a purchasing decision. To your question, the philosophy that we follow internally is whatever you get paid as salary at the end of the month comes from the customer buying the bike. The moment he realizes that by seeing that sentence put in at the end of his salary slip, then everything else forgets. And second, to our partners, we keep telling them very simple. We are not selling rocket science. We are not selling spaceships. We are selling a productized service, which fundamentally means if a customer is not happy with your product or a service, he has multiple other options to look for. Today, he may not have that option, but tomorrow, you yourself with a bad experience and bad arrogance and bad attitude are going to give birth to our competitors. So please don't do that. So my simple humble statement to all my franchisee partners is let's not create competition by our own attitude towards consumers.
Mm.
These are very simple, effective statements which people can easily understand and implement in their daily lives.
Sure, sure. Interesting. So how do you, so I was reading Robert Felix. So, he very simply put it forth that, strategy without process is nothing more than a wish or a wish list or a bucket list, right? So having said that, you kind of talk that, strategy in your company. What decisions, and what something which comes at the forefront lets you take a decision that will take company to a second level from now?
Okay. So there are two things. We are a very data heavy company. That means whatever decisions we take based on the data that is coming from grounds up. Give an example. 2 years back, when we were doing a lot of refurbishments, we realized that the quality of bikes that are coming back to us for repair for either 7-day bike protect or 6 months warranty had a certain kind of signature to it. That means one part of the bike is really not being is coming back to us for repair repeatedly. So we looked through a course of data and understood that the warehouse where it is being repaired or the mechanics who are repair are not of the best class to repair that part. So immediately we took care of that and focused on getting those kind of specialist people to be able to repair that. So these kind of insights that we get from our own data that we collect across the vehicles helps us to improve our own processes. To answer your question, what is the next big thing that we are currently internally doing to improve our business from 1.0 to 2.0 is trying to also address a lot of outlier problems. For example, a lot of consumers come back to us and say, hey guys, can you offer me a consumer loan? Today, we don't offer a consumer loan at all. We are now talking to two leading banks. One is a public sector bank, the other is a private sector bank, who are willing to write a small consumer loan for customers who have a really reasonable CIBIL score or reasonable credit history. Now, this is one way of solving the problem for them. The second is we just solved insurance. If you understand, a lot of second-hand dealers really don't care about the insurance bit, because once the गाड़ी बेचने के बाद उनको insurance का कुछ परवड़ता ही नहीं है. We said that why can't we create that convenience to the consumer? So we partner with India's largest digital insurance company, Digit, at the wherein the entire bike sale plus insurance comes as a single package. And we really got a very good deal from Digit because we are offering them a mass scale of production by virtue of which the customer doesn't have to care about again going out for a insurance product as such. So I think there are a lot of problem statements still which are unfinished in our current line of business, which requires technology solutions to be able to scale the business.
Okay. So that's something that helps your franchisees also to the customer, is something that is centralized done.
Yes, it is centralized done. So the franchisee doesn't have to run from pillar to post for augmenting both these options, whether it is consumer finance or consumer insurance part. All those things come integrated into the product itself, so that it doesn't have to again go out of the way. In fact, it's a very strong selling point to a franchisee, because when he associates himself with brands like Digit, HDFC Bank, Hero FinCorp, it indirectly elevates his own brand image in front of the consumer, that we are dealing with a brand which has this kind of names associated with them.
True. True. Because if he's alone, then he will not be able to probably get those services to a consumer, and that fairly play a very important role when it comes to experience and when it comes to services. Sure, that's an interesting thing. So how, Sasi, past few months have, not been too great, for the market. How it has changed, work for Credar, and so what I would say, what kind of a consumer expectation that has been changed from Credit?
As the last few months have been pretty tough on the market, on the consumers and everyone else. Surprisingly and expectedly, second-hand bike business has been really doing very well, because public transport is next to zero, and people really don't have the attitude or the wherewithal to buy a new bike at least 50 to 20% higher prices because of BS6 transmission norms. So people are really looking for a cheap and best private mobility option, and that's where Credar fits in very cozily. So to that extent, the second-hand bike segment per se has really gone from places to places in the last few months. Predominantly, the second bike business is suffering from deep trust. And that too in an environment where people can't step out of their homes to buy a second-hand bike, whether it is a dealer or a known brand, it makes much more strong sense for a brand like Credar to come and say, okay, boss, don't worry, you all have to choose a bike on our website and we'll get the bike delivered to your home, and you should trust us because we are a brand, plays a much significant role than ever before. Because before that, people actually used to have an option to walk into a street and look whether this is a Credar showroom, this is a bike, or whether a second-hand dealer, dekh sakta hu. Now the situation is such that they have to buy bike from a consumer brand where they can deeply trust them. So this situation, which is not really a very good situation from a consumer standpoint, but brands like us really win over the consumers in this space, because we are very well equipped to answer all the questions of a consumer without stepping out of their homes, just digitally.
Okay, so you're entertaining orders digitally and serving them, and the franchisees are also doing the same.
Yes. So the entire technology that we have built in last 6 months is so hands-free that the franchisee really doesn't have to talk to us, or doesn't really require any of our sales executives to come to the showroom so often to complete the transactions. I think it's a blessing in disguise. I think Corona virus has forcefully transformed a lot of businesses into digital businesses. Luckily, we've already seen this trend happening in last 6 to 8 months, and we were prepared. And we can always say in hindsight that we knew Corona were going to come, and our digital solutions. Not now. Maybe when we are going to IPO, we will.
You probably can get into trouble if you already knew that. Why didn't you tell them? Like they're trying to say about China that they always knew that this was coming. They never told the world. So right. Trump is going all over the world and saying that they would have told earlier better, right? But on a serious note, this is a very good point, and I really want to pick up your perspective on this, because historically, last for 23, 24 years for Franchise India also, we've been running a very clearly a brick and mortar kind of franchise model, historically. And this was very clearly that it was classic dealership model where people would buy a product from you, store the product, and just create that. And the rest everything would be handled by the company. The two things he has to handle is put the inventory in place and create a last mile consumer experience. The rest pretty much was handled by the company. But I think a lot is changing now, and I feel that the way consumer is having an interface is becoming earlier the interface was essentially you were running a business to consumer business kind of thing. Now companies have very clearly interface directly with the consumer while the fulfillment is done from the channel partner, and it can become quite a confusing unless and until you clearly define who does what and what is a role, and is it a lasting role, because sometimes it might start with, and I've seen a lot of digital companies who created the interface because they wanted to do a go-to-market strategy, but at later as a stage, they found that it was not relevant because the consumer itself was very clearly handled. On the other side, I'm seeing a lot of companies which have pure play digital plays now going in offline and creating these models, like say Grofers now opening up physical stores to really put up the entire thing. So a lot of other companies are also doing what I call O2O kind of a capability. Where do you see really, I mean, I'm not talking about more from Kedar point, but I'm more from seeing where do you see this is going to bridge, and what this has already evolved or will continue to evolve, and where do you see this balance between this new models which would transform in the market, and what would be sustainable model for a franchisee to go forward, and do you also see that in going forward it will become inventory light models or things of that nature, or inventory is very important to be kept at the store because touch and feel and physically checking the particular bike, and so what is your viewpoint on that?
Gaurav, good question. I think it's a very relevant question for these times. Predominantly, we believe India is a very, very different country compared to any other developed market, developing market. The hybrid approach of online and offline will always be there. More so in those categories where touch and feel is very highly needed. For example, in bike category, though we are seeing a good, decent uptick of customers ordering online and getting delivered offline, even in those cases, we have seen that the customer is trying to look at the franchisee showroom from where the bike is coming to him. So we also, just like a Shopify kind of an customer experience, we are deliberately giving it in the website itself, wherein each showroom has its own web page. So they can easily see the showroom from where these bikes are being shipped to the nearest customer house or delivery point. And the reason why they are doing that is because they still have somewhere in the mind, अगर कुछ गाड़ी को होगा तो मुझे किसको जाके पूछना पड़ेगा. Okay, so or whom should I go and talk to? For a larger part of our psyche, we really want to talk to someone. हमको बात करना means they like to have a physical touch point where you can go and talk. Today, take an example of some of the very reputed financial institutions. I don't know, take names. Which said that all the banking will be done digitally. And I also enrolled in one of those really very popular digital banks. But today I'm suffering a lot because I don't get my check picked up, checkbooks don't come along. There are a lot of hassles. India is not a fully digital enabled economy at all. It will not be for decades together, for reason because the population demographics are so diversified that you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach for everything. And the beauty about our country is, even a country which has a 2% customer uptick for any product, the market size will be in few $1 billion, unlike in US or other countries, because the entire population of US is around 300 million. The total number of bikes that are sold in India is more than the population of the US. So to that context, if you are able to build a really unified and standardized customer experience, whether it is online and offline, the markets are going to win. The franchises are very much needed in those businesses where touch and feel will be there forever. And compared to a new bike scenario where the products are pretty much standard, because Activa 2020 would remain the same, smell the same, color the same, whether you buy it in Delhi, Bangalore or Trivandrum. Whereas 2016 Activa ran for 20,000 kilometers will look very different in Delhi, Bangalore and Trivandrum. So altogether more, it becomes much more compelling reason for someone to continue in a franchisee facing retail showroom based business in a category like us than compared to a new bike category. But
Sure.
having said that, even a new bike category has never seen such innovation. When we started franchise retail showrooms 4 years back, people were all over the place saying that retail, digital, online, online, online. People I still remember some of the investors we met made fun of us saying that when everyone is going digital, you guys are going the other way around. I said, trust us. Today, when I see Flipkart, Zivame, all those people setting up showrooms, I feel fairly vindicated that India is predominantly a O2O model. It can never happen. Take an example of US itself. In US, used car market still requires companies like Carvana, VRoom, Shift to help them make the purchasing decisions for used cars. Where are we? Yesterday I was talking to someone in US. I was asking him, in US, every customer has a digital footprint. That means you are on Facebook, I'm on Facebook. Why can't I go and say, hey Gaurav, I want to sell my Tesla to you. Why don't you buy? I can do that. But still, I go and sell my Tesla to a Carvana and Carvana refurbish that and sell it to me. Because inherently, these kind of products require assisted buying. And assisted buying digitally can only be done to a reasonably extent. You can't do completely. So the hybrid mix of online and offline is needed for decades together.
Very well said. I think absolutely right. And I think more the consumer would get evolved, more it'll need value-added services. And a lot more is available in the aftermarket capability. And that also is going to be a big answer to it, because unless and until you have this fulfillment which can handle and reassure the aftermarket capability, especially for a second-hand market. And I think that's where it would really do. And I see a bigger future for you, because if you create this whole network, not only you will be a second bike kind of a situation, but a lot of people who would like to do a replacement, which means that I'm run out of this, I will bring that and sell that older one to you. So it will also be a collection point and aggregation points for you.
It's already happening, Gaurav.
So that to me is a very strong thing. So people who have vintage over 5 years would come and sell. People who would like to take a lesser vintage. So a lot of that exchange itself, which is not so much recorded in the overall bike sales, because exchanges are not so much captured in that, because you fundamentally, not doing that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And this can also be a big reference point. I mean, if you see the ecosystem in the US, the old resale are also one of the biggest recommenders to the new OEMs, which means that if 5 people come and sell me, they might not like to buy a second hand, but they might like to buy a new bike.
Happening,
also is an opportunity for you. So rather, you are in a very unique situation in place where you are doing new bike, second bike sales. You're doing people to exchange their bikes with the older to old, relatively better refurbished bike, and also being a recommendation to a new bike. So there is a whole life cycle of the ecosystem, and this fulfillment point, which are your franchisees, can play a very important role.
Yes.
Over to you, Ashta, for your next question.
Yeah. So there's a related question that somebody's just asked that so I thought I'll just ask it right in between. So how does a franchise work? I mean, he's the one who manages the inventory, like you said that the people can come and sell it and people can come and buy it. So he's the one who manages the cost of the inventory and keep it?
Very simple, Ashita. In our case, what happens is once the franchisee signs up with us, we provide everything to him from supply to demand. Supply ka matlab, we give him what kind of inventory mix has to be kept at a showroom. So 2 to 3 years back, people used to ask us, why would a franchisee not ask me, I don't know this bike, I don't know. The core expertise of Pledar lies in our ability to understand what sells where at what price. If you put up a wrong inventory at the wrong price, at the wrong location, your liquidation will never happen. So over a period of last 5 years, we have understood कौन सा गाड़ी कहाँ पे बिकता है और किस दाम पे बिकता है. So that's all we know very well, and that's a knowledge which is gold dust. When you're scaling the business, even if you put wrong set of bikes at wrong prices, those bikes will never be sold. So the franchises trust us completely. when they say that we are partnering with you, so we take care of all their needs, business needs. We know what bikes to be supplied at what prices, and we also supply the demand to them. That means we are responsible to make sure that the bikes that they buy from us are ultimately sold to the consumer.
Okay, so there's a inventory shift also that happens.
Yes, there is inventory shift happens. So the way it works out, Smita, is that we buy the bikes from different sources, we refurbish them, and we sell it to our franchisees.
Sure. So a franchisee would have both the options with him.
Both, matlab?
In the sense that if somebody comes and sells a bike to him,
No, the
he can,
the franchisee showrooms are only points of sale. That means
okay.
only bikes will be sold. Bike will not be procured there.
So they can obviously put a reference, but that reference can come to directly to Gadar for procuring and refurbishing, and then subsequently it will be sold. So
Yep.
they refurbish and put it on the stores. So stores would have all the refurbished, and technically it's just a huge industry, and the way technology has moved, way the engines are changed, the way the structure is done. I think the only thing you actually need is refurbishing.
Yes.
And this is a big threat for OEMs. OEM doesn't know what they're doing because the kind of technologies they're now trying to create, it would create a ageless kind of a structure, broader structure. Rest is all about lot of other things which you can refurbish.
In
And
fact, a lot of like the way in Maruti case or any of most of the car brands, the OEM brands are also very conscious whether their bikes should have a very good second resale value. So we are working with a lot of OEM companies who come back to us and ask us what are the kind of typical repairs that you come across vehicles which ran for say 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 kilometers. Because once the customer buys a new bike, after 12 months of mandatory warranty that comes free, no one goes to the authorized service center for repairing their vehicles. That means the OEM brands are completely losing contact with the customers. So those bikes which are out of warranty after market, they come to us for repair, and we are able to get a better sense of what may go wrong. So I can't name those OEMs, but most of the OEMs wanted to get that knowledge because they want to fix them in their own product development cycle when they come up with the new versions of the same product. I hope I was clear in my point.
no, sure. I think it
Yes.
makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
And that's exactly the core IP for us because of which OEMs also like to work with us because they'll get a sense of what is going on with their bikes after 2 to 3 years. Because when they are pricing the bikes at around 80,000, 90,000, they want to make sure that the customers still enjoy the bikes after 1, 2 years later also. That's where the resale prices of the bikes are fixed.
Sure, sure. So, having said that, franchisee definitely, depends upon you for a lot when it comes to R&D or when it comes to, giving him the products. How, it's a very tricky thing. How do you manage your relationships with your franchisees? Of course, they are different. By the end of the day, they're also owners of their own businesses, and so you are. But there are the different levels. So, how do you manage that? A relationship that goes in between both, because the equation can go up and high and low at any point in time.
Fair point, Ashmita. Like every business, things will go up and down. But the only thing that we always ask the franchises to manage is the fact that the business needs a certain level of maturity to understand. That level of maturity you'll get only when you are in the business for at least decent 6 to 8 months. A lot of questions that a franchisee gets answered when the business is going on its own. अगर हर मंथ उसको इतने पैसे मिल रहा है तो most of the franchises don't even come back to you. It's only when sales don't happen, and one of the main reasons sales don't happen is because franchises typically take their focus away from this business. One of the biggest mistake most of the franchises make is within 3 to 6 months when the money then they start seeing a lot of money, they start investing that money in other businesses and start giving this to some chotu of their family to run. The moment you do that, then the business will go down. Then they come back to us saying that nahi dhanda nahi chal raha. Nahi chalega sir, aapko you have to be part of the business. This is not you're not selling a Google product. You're not selling Microsoft Windows, right? So you need to be at the forefront of the franchise business. That is a mistake people do. Complacency kills the business. So that's the reason we have regular dialogues with our franchisee once in a month or once in a quarter to keep them understand this point. You made money last month, very good. This month, very good. But if you don't do the same things next month, end up becoming in red. So don't make mistake just because you had 2 profitable months doesn't mean the third month will be profitable.
Very important, and I think the whole fun of franchising is all about operator owner. And the owner is secondary. The first is being operator. So if you're not a good operator, just by ownership of anything would not get you money. And the whole fundamental of the franchising globally has been very successful. Is that people really saw that as buying yourself a job. You know, it's your own. While you are employed in your own company, but you have to run and operate that business as a head of the business. And I feel that rather I'm seeing a big change post COVID. The kind of people who are coming now to take a franchise are very strong operators, which was a problem earlier before COVID, because before COVID, you tend to get a lot of people who have spare cash and want to invest into something which can give them additional income, or people would like to do that. But now it's changed. It's almost everybody is coming in a very strong operator, which is a good sign for franchising. And I think franchising needs those kind of people who essentially would become a strong operators in the business.
Great. So Gaurav, just to add to that point, 3 years back when we started our franchisee business, it took us almost 6 months to sell our first franchisee. People will ask all sort of questions. आप कहाँ से हो, क्या कर सकते हो, गाड़ी नहीं बिके तो क्या हो जाएगा, यही गाड़ी क्यों खरीदना है, यही प्राइस पे क्यों खरीदना है. After 3 years in the business, close to 50% of our showrooms are held by a single franchisee owner, which really makes us very happy, because people who buy one franchisee for us, after seeing the success, take up second, third, fourth franchisee from us. Like the one who is currently operating in Bhilwara, he is taking a couple of more franchisee showrooms to himself. The same is the case in Bangalore, same is the case in Delhi. So I think these are very heartening signs. People who really like the concept, who are जो गड़े हैं showroom में, and they know that it's their business, and they are actively participating that corporate operating, like the right word what Gaurav used, operator in that. They are seeing a lot of money, and they are the kind of people that really we want to work with, because it's a marriage of two strong operators, one at the center level, the other at the ground level. If either of these two guys don't work properly, the chance of the venture being successful is very remote. You should never take your eye off the ball, then you're gone. A lot of people make a mistake saying that since Predar is giving us bike and also getting us customer, हमारा काम क्या है यहाँ पे? सबसे बड़ा काम आप ही का है, क्योंकि franchisee जब बैठता है showroom में, his ability to attract a customer, talk to him, engage in conversation, convert the bike sale is something which I can't do sitting at the center of my office. Okay, so I think the role of franchisee in our business is really very big.
So, having said that, he runs, understandably, he's the entrepreneur, and it's, now return on, involvement rather than the return on investment, as we say in franchising business, has to be done. So how is, so we've spoken about mathematics in the relationship in between, the company and the franchisee. How does the chemistry works, and how much, according to you, plays a role in the whole gamut of relationship?
If this question was asked to me 3 years back, I would have given you some English answer. Today, I have the answer very much laid down in SOPs. For everything that you see in our operations, there is standard operating procedures. From the way you talk to a customer, the way you handle him, the way you ask him the right questions, the way you make him understand, boss, we are not selling the bike, we are just trying to help you get a really good mobility which matches your budget and your persona. So the relationship between us and franchisee now is much more crystal clear, more black and white. Our job is to make sure that we get them the right set of bikes at the right prices, as per the demographics of that area. I will not, if in an area a lot of Royal Enfields are being sold, I will not gonna send you Activas. The same way, if an area a lot of Activas are sold, I will not send you Harley Davidson and KTMs of the world. So there should be a mutual trust between two companies, that is the franchisee and the company. And we have earned the trust over a period of 3 years. Initially, we had a lot of tussle back and forth with the franchisee, because franchisee believes that he knows more than us. But having said that, when he knows that कुछ बाइक बिकते नहीं थे, तो उनको पता चलता था कि नहीं, हाँ सर आपकी बात तो सही था, ये बाइक नहीं लेना था हमको. So some of the teething problems were there in the initial 12 to 18 months. Now, to a large extent, all those questions have disappeared. So next time when we onboard a new franchisee, all we tell him, ki boss, go and talk to our old franchisee. Whatever he suggests you, whatever he advises you, you please follow it blindly. So now our job is to only direct people to the franchisees in our network.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
that's a good thing to do. Yeah. So when a partner praises and share his happiness, it goes a long way.
Exactly.
True.
Because
So
whatever we do at the end of the day is marketing and sales. But whatever my partner says, they'll take it much more seriously. And I'm very happy that people are doing this, because in a market where people make a lot of tall claims of making you rich over a period of one day, we give you 100x returns in 2 days. I want people to go and ask hard, real questions. We are very confident about our product and service. That's the reason we push our potential franchises to go and speak to our franchises. So there is no better way than that, than being transparent in this nature. But having said that, it's a business. ऊपर नीचे तो होएगा. अगर if the business is straight, then you rather put the money in the FD rather than do business with us.
sure. So how does this, so having said that the relationship goes on well, and are you open for conversion franchising as well? So say, for example, if somebody was not doing this, he was only doing sale and purchase at his own way, are you open if somebody comes to you to become your franchisee?
This is a very hotly debated topic internally also. When we started the business 3 years back, we initially experimented with that because low hanging fruit है ना, तो किया था. But the results have not been really great for obvious reasons. So one of the reasons why the results were not great is because once you are in the business of second-hand bikes as a dealer, you would have already developed a certain way of doing things, which is very difficult to change or modify or teach, reteach or relearn unless and until really you're a good person. तो अगर हम सेकंड हैंड डीलर किसी मार्केट से उठा के बोलेंगे यार तू क्रेडार का फ्रेंचाइज बन, वो बोलेगा यार मैं धंधा ऐसे ही करूंगा, मुझे ऐसे ही आता है. So you understand, so the mental reconditioning of a existing second hand dealer to be able to understand our SOPs is really a big challenge. And we've tried doing that. It's not that we have not done that. We have done with few initial franchises, but the effort was not worth it.
Yeah, conversion franchise has a big problem. We call it three real big problems. One can be a entrepreneur problem, which means that he himself is not solely suited for this. So if you convert him, then he'll bring all the problems he has in the business. Second is a location problem, which can be also there. And the third is, what I call the little bit of an operational problem, which you can still fix. But the first two problems, if they exist, what do? You get into the wrong side. You cannot turn around that asset. So if it is only the operational part of it, means that it doesn't have right supply chain, and if it doesn't have
That can be fixed.
that can be fixed. But if it is a people problem or a location problem, then you are just stuck with it. So
even location problem, Gaurav, to some extent we can solve it because
of your demand creation now.
This is not. So we have a certain blueprint of the locations where we set up the franchise showroom. So we just don't do randomly everywhere.
Correct.
So location searching is everything is our prerogative. So
Correct.
we have built a playbook wherein the moment a franchise comes on board, we help him with everything. So we have a city like Bangalore, we have close to 800 hotspots where you can set up a franchise showroom in Bangalore. So he doesn't have to worry about again doing the work right from scratch. So there are a lot of such kind of scientific studies that we have used internally to set up the showroom locations. But the
Correct.
biggest benchmark, the biggest challenge for converting is the franchisee mindset. Because he used to working in certain manner, he doesn't want anyone to dictate him how to do it better because he thinks he's better. The moment you think you are better, you're gone.
True. So what is the number at a national scale now that you're looking at? I mean, what are the plans in next year or next to next year? I understand, there would not be long-term plans right now, but what is it that you look forward to do in terms of number of franchisees, appointing them at a national scale?
Asmita, there are two ways to look at it. I think we never assumed that a same franchise will take multiple showrooms with us. Initially, when we thought we are opening say 40 to 50 odd showrooms, we'll assume that 40 to 50 unique franchise owners would be there. But I
Hmm.
think that journey has cut short by a lot of franchisees taking multiple showrooms with us. So today we only have around 20 or 25 unique franchisees with us who have multiple showrooms with us. So we have not put up a date, but we believe by the end of this financial year, we should be anywhere between 100 to 120 franchisee showrooms across these 9 to 10 cities.
Hmm.
And out of which we already have a visibility of around 30 to 40 showrooms as we speak now.
Okay. So the concentration is on tier 1 right now.
Concentration will be on tier 2 and tier 3 also. The tier 1, Delhi and Bangalore is good, but we are seeing a lot of demand coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities like Bhilwara, Jaipur, Udaipur, Jodhpur. These are the kind of cities which don't have the trusted brand concept. There are a lot of
Hmm.
secondary dealers where the customer really don't believe. And the Bharat side of the business is much stronger than the Indian side of the business. To answer your question, I think we believe the next 12 to 18 months will be a very strong Bharat pull for us.
Hmm.
Yep, yep. It makes a lot of sense in markets like UP, MP, Chhattisgarh. Uh, these are markets which has huge opportunity, very big opportunity, very underpenetrated, even underpenetrated by OEMs.
Yes.
So while OEMs looks like gone everywhere, leave aside one or two players which are very strong, Honda and Hero and Bajaj, which is only well penetrated players in the market. But rest everybody has not even reached there. So I feel that there is a huge amount of opportunity to give options to this, and this also is changing. This world is going to change, and this has to the market share will disrupt in the OEM space also. And I feel that with the electric bikes and all the other things coming around, the whole structure of the dominance of these three or four uh, player, while their volume might be there, but the overall market share might not be the same way as they have gone over the years.
And if that happens, Gaurav, we are the biggest beneficiaries because we are sitting in
Correct, correct. Absolutely, I agree with you.
want to sell his old bike to buy a new electric vehicle. We are the de facto choice for that.
Correct. And I feel that the technology itself would help you a lot, because when I see this moving towards the e-bike kind of situation, refurbishing would be absolutely giving a new bike. There was no dominance would remain with because the engine vintage and all these things would no more be the question, right? You can refurbish it would be absolutely as good as this, so it has no reason of so the whole refurbishing space in 5 to 7 years from now would look very different in the what it looks now. So I think you are in the right space when this disruption is going on, and you will be able to get more value in that, right?
Yeah. But the word of caution here, Gaurav, the electric bike transformation, I don't think so will happen as quickly as is.
Yeah. We all know the infrastructure itself is a very slow movement, and I'm surprised that the OEMs have started moving much faster than the infrastructure, which is very big drawback. And while Franchise India is also working with a lot of charging infrastructure companies, but the kind of ability they want to build over the time and the kind of capex currently is required, nobody has committed that kind of capex unless and until a very large company comes in and puts the capex, and which was my expectation that 3 or 4 players like a Tata Electric or Mahindra or players of that nature would have at least adopted few cities and created some large infrastructure, which has not happened. And I think
Gaurav, take an example. Sorry to interrupt you, but take an example of developed markets like US or Europe. When those markets themselves have penetration of less than 1% for e-cars, I think uh, I'm not being negative, but I'm saying I'm very cautiously positive that this may happen in India much faster than other market. Primarily because it's not only just an infrastructure problem, but also the problem of uncertainty. Uncertainty around the technology, uncertainty around the stability of the technology. Because if you see in the case of Tesla, Tesla is already running out of the materials that is needed to make that battery. So if you have gone through their analyst reports of late, Tesla is saying that after 2025 they will not have any material left to make a Tesla car. That's a worrying factor for them. Because the main element that you use for the battery is already in short supply. The same thing that you use for cars or bikes also. So a lot of those technological things are not very stable as I think. I would love. I'm at the top of the funnel, so for me it doesn't matter.
Correct. But I give you one example. This is an example I quote when people understand. So this always the existing players would create a biggest roadblock in any technological change because they have millions and billions of dollars being deployed in the conventional technologies, and they are the biggest roadblock to not have that change happen. And everybody has seen that. I'll give you an example. LED bulbs were actually much before in 90s invented by Philips. But Philips had their own large, in older technologies, invested a very, very large billions of dollars being parked there, which has not come down to the age. So they held it. So they were not really reducing the price. They knew the technology is invented. They can bring the bulbs at a very, very low cost value in 90s. But they held the entire 90s. They held the entire early 2000. They were available in the market, but the pricing was so high. They kept it intentionally because they felt that the conventional technologies of there would go away. And suddenly, in one single day, you would saw that everybody changed, and because they saw that now Chinese companies are now dumping the product in the market, and LED would be available, and they will lose the market share. And overnight, Philips started bringing Ranbir Kapoor as a brand ambassador, and everybody talking about LED, and LED suddenly became very available. So it surprises me that the same company which invented so back, why would not leave the market situation. So it always happens because people, when they are deployed in older technologies and older structures, because their money is still stuck there in their older technologies, they create full roadblock to make sure that this is not changed. But there is a tipping point in everything. There is a tipping point which consumer brings in, and that day happens, and you will see everybody would shift. Now Hero knows electric is a future, but what would they do? Hero has so much of riding on their conventional biking. So it's
Capex in their existing facility itself, they have to justify that.
yeah. So it's a difficult answer to give, but consumer decides all that today. Whenever consumer makes a shift, everything shifts, and then overnight people find a way to really accommodate that shift.
I agree with you, Gaurav. I agree with you. But the trends that I'm seeing in US are not so super
Again,
encouraging.
US, what do they do with the the entire the auto industry runs in US, so they don't like Tesla so much. They like Tesla, but they don't like Tesla so much because the job market and everything else is related to the so Michigan City.
We are agnostic, Gaurav. I think for me anything works. In fact, the more the transformation happens, better for me because for me, tier 3, tier 4 is a massive market. So if I can get this vehicle at cheaper rate, for me, tier 2, tier 3 market will open up like mad. Because in India, the two-wheeler penetration is serendipitously less than Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan of the like. We have very low penetration of two-wheelers in India, which fundamentally means a large section of population still doesn't have enough money to buy a second-hand vehicle. So for me, this is God sent message if this kind of transformation changes happen.
Correct. I think so. We're all waiting for the tipping point to happen, and I'm sure for a company like you who has a right rate, right space, and you also have found your own value addition, which is very important. You're just not a trading company, and everybody should know that you have both from a technology enhancement and also from this refurbishing capability. This is not easy for somebody to duplicate. So you also have really done a very large value addition, just not being a aggregator or trader in the market. So there is a much more what you build. So
1200 SKUs, Gaurav, just to give you the complexity of the refurbishment process. There are 1200 SKUs for which we do refurbishment.
Absolutely, and I feel that there's easy said than done with the kind of capabilities one has to really build to do that, and that's why your some market focus is very good. I like that focus because you're very, very clear from the day one. You're not going everywhere. You're building market by market, so it's a good thing. So over to Ashita for you for the final words.
I would not have much time to ask questions next, but just one thing which is running in my mind on a lighter note with Shaunak and Shinav, your two sons. how have you been managing to work? I mean, two boys, it's difficult. How are you doing it from home?
I think these two, at least my elder son is one of the marketing brainchild for me. He keeps the consumer insights. He sees my creatives on Facebook and he keeps criticizing me. And I think he plays a very constructive role of that. The younger one is a shock absorber. I think without these two folks, I don't think so. I would have been so mentally free after going through a very operational intensive businesses like that. I think we all have the comfort of our kids and family who will act like shock absorber for all this kind of stuff.
And you're not paying. What are you doing? So this is a free service, right?
My elder son is very blunt. He's very blunt. When he sees a marketing collateral which is really bad, he comes back to me and gives his peace of mind. So to that extent, we have in fact seriously implemented some of his suggestions. He's just a 10-year-old guy, but we really implemented a couple of his suggestions in my marketing collateral, which I don't tell my team. I tell my team these are my suggestions so that they don't take it light. But yes, some of the suggestions came from me.
Actually,
We should actually call Shaunak and tell him that his royalties are due with Credar.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a change now. Oxford, they're doing BMW has set up a lab there they call it a BMW mini lab, which is actually set up in Oxford for 14-year-old to work on this. They're all 14 years working on this project.
What is it? What do you call that? Sorry?
Actually, BMW has set up a lab there in Oxford University. And I saw that this was done for the brand called Mini, the mini car of BMW. So they have created a lab and only for age group of 14, because they feel that the future auto disruptors would come from that age. So they are the ones who are working on new design capabilities, new this capabilities. And this is a BMW project with Oxford. So the thinking level and the creativity of disruption essentially comes at the best at that age where your son is today. And a lot of people are actually globally recognizing because they understand that this is the only time where they have relatively much more easier in terms of their thinking, and that can influence the design change. We all have something which is already preset to us. So sometimes we try to be innovative thinkers, we're not able to. And in last 10 odd years, the disruption has always come from invisible competition. It has never come from a visible competition.
Yeah, agree. So one of the questions, Gaurav, just parting remarks from my side. When we meet a lot of OEM brands, the first question they ask is, did I work in any OEM auto company? I said no. Did I ever sell one bike in my entire life? I said no. Then you're not qualified to talk to us. That's a typical question we used to get. That because then we keep telling that the guy who founded Uber never ran a cabin business entire lively. The guy who started a Airbnb never started a hotel business by himself. I think you're absolutely right. People coming from outside the industry, people come with fresh bend of mind, are the people who are going to change the industries. I completely agree with you on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. That's a very good takeaway. Unfortunately, our time is running. So we would, thank you so much, Sasi. Having said that, you were not feeling too well, but thank you so much for your time. And, there are a couple of questions that I will probably email it to you to answer back to our people. They would listen. And for all the listeners, you can follow us on the links that you show on the screen. And you can write to us directly. We would be happy to answer all your queries regarding franchising and particularly Credar as well. And thank you so much for your time. It was lovely talking to you.
Thanks so much, Ashwita and Gaurav, for having me here. Pleasure talking to you guys.
Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.